So, no, I wouldn't say I have a passion for HR.
Welcome back to Human Resources for the People. It's a human capital revolution. Today we're going to be going to Ireland and we're going to talk about their new right to request remote and flexible work time. On March 7th of this year, March 7th, 2024, there was a new statutory right that got put into place to request flexible work for parents and carers and the statutory right to request remote working for all employees. So we'll talk about that a little bit. It's under the new Work-Life Balance and Miscellaneous Provisions Act. It doesn't actually allow employees to challenge a substantive real refusal, right? So if an employer, gives something, actually useful, there's a reason why it doesn't give them that right to go against it, but the employer has to follow the prescriptive processes. They actually have to go through the process when making the analysis of both flexible work and remote work. Now, I'll say that this could cause some problems, right? This sounds great in theory, but I think it could lead to some discrimination on the part of employers against people who are parents, right? This idea of flexible working could lead employers down the path of, well, I don't want to mess with having an employee who will request flexible work, so why hire a parent, for example. Now that's obviously an employee you probably don't actually want to work for, but it is something the people have to be mindful of. These laws have impacts, and those impacts aren't just simply everyone gets flexible work time or everyone becomes a remote worker. So they actually go to the Workplace Relations Commission as a labor court, and ultimately they can tell an employer that they have to go through the process or ultimately give payout. And it wouldn't be any more than 20 weeks for flexible work requests, and not any more than 4 weeks for remote work. But employers have to consider the nature of discrimination, and in theory, make sure that they have clear objective reasons for refusal. So let's briefly go over this process of both flexible work and remote work, and then ultimately I will kind of compare to the United States. So with the new Parental Leave Acts of 1998 through 2023, they talk about how flexible working is a working arrangement where an employee's working hours or working patterns are adjusted through remote work, changing schedules, reduced working hours, and it can look any number of ways, like remote work. It can look like compressed working hours, so they work longer days, 410s, whatever, 312s. They can also do job sharing or term time work. And with the right to request flexible working, it's actually very specific. You have to either be a parent or acting in loco parentis to a child under 12 years of age. And I want to give a little bit of shout out here. I guess I should have expected that the Irish use the same language as the same Latin language as Americans do. We, of course, use in loco parentis, especially with respect to FMLA, among other things, right? As well as providing personal care or support to a specified person, and gives a whole list. These are all things that they can do. They can request it from the first day, but must ultimately work 6 months continuous with an employer before an approved arrangement can start. And what I want to highlight here is this may make employers less reticent to hire people with a child, and or may make them, give them a tighter leash with respect to probation. They may be more likely to, fire someone if they think that they're going to request a flexible working. And they have to have a form for flexible work. They have to have a proposed starting date and duration, as well as details of whom the request is for, meaning who they're caring for and who that person is under this new act. Then finally, they have the right to a response to the flexible working request. In the 4 weeks following, they can either approve the request and give an agreement signed by both parties, or provide notice in writing informing the employee that the request has been refused and why. Or they can just say that they need more time. And so that's the right to response. And that's more than anything what this is about, is a right to response. It's not a statutory right. With respect to remote work, for the purposes of the Work-Life Balance and Miscellaneous Provisions Act of 2023, it's an arrangement where they can work at home or some other place besides the employer's place of duties. And all employees have this right to make a statutory request for remote work, but they have to have, again, at least 6 months of continuous employment, and it's before an approved arrangement could start. I suppose that an employer could be hired right off the bat for remote work. I suppose, big presumption. But they also ultimately, just like flexible work, they have to give details of the arrangement, how many days, starting and end date, and the reason. And there's reasons that for requesting the remote work, which could include reducing the daily commute and carbon footprint, optimizing quality of life outside of normal working hours, in personal or domestic circumstances. So, they encourage you to write reasons for the remote work. In the United States, most employers don't, need reasons for this sort of thing, but they, have this choice either way. And then they have the right to receive a notice from the employer, either approving it and setting the dates and everything else, or refusing the request by written notice. Again, this is nothing more than a statutory. This is nothing more than a right to request. It's not a statutory right. So ultimately, the company, as long as they have good reason, can deny this, and that's effectively the same as the United States. I mean, the only difference, I suppose, is that they don't have the right to. Americans don't typically have the right to get a response back, but I don't know of any company that is not giving a response. Maybe that happens, but I'm not aware of it. What do you
What
think?
do you
If you're
think about
Irish, are you
today's
excited
video?
about this law?
Please
If you're
comment down
American, do you
below.
wish we had it here?
Like,
Let me know in the
share,
comments
and
down below. Like,
subscribe.
share,
It
and
really
subscribe, and we'll
helps
see you in the next
out.
video. Bye, guys.